Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of TCG Talk, back today with another video. And in today's video, as you can see, we're going to be going over Benji deck tech post Uprising and kind of talk about the deck a little bit and talk about what additions have I made to Uprising, with Uprising cards, if any, and kind of like where I think Benji's going to be going into the Blitz format. And overall, I think he's going to be in a really good spot, and we'll talk about why. But yeah, so we're going to talk about Benji. When it comes to his equipment, we kind of have two different things here, right? There's two ways of looking at Benji, I think, the way you got to play. And you play in kind of like a mid-rangey type, and then you play in like a fast kind of aggro type, right? So with Benji, you have his two Kodachis. Nothing's going to change with that, right? Nothing's going different. The first decision point you have to make is it going to be a high aggro matchup, or is it going to kind of be just like anything but a high aggro matchup? And the way you decide that is, am I going to live past 3 turns? Is my opponent going to be threatening lethal like turn 2? And if he is, then you might want to, then you have to make a certain decision. So if you think your opponent's like lethal turn 2, which in my opinion would be like Briar and Phi, maybe even Ira, then I would go, not Mask, I would go Mask and Pouncing Lynx. Mask and Pouncing Lynx is kind of like the I need my key card now type card. You're not going to wait for a mass draw or wait for a mask momentum play or anything like that. You're really just going to try to get to your power card quickly when you need it and then be able to play it. So you play that in aggro matchup. In any other matchup, I'd say anything other than Phi and Briar, you're going to probably play mask momentum, at least in my opinion, because you're going to want to threaten that mass trigger, make them interact with you, and kind of, you can kind of be okay with not having to like worry about losing turn 2. So that's for that. For the chest piece, I'm running Findel Spring Tunic at all times. With Heart and Cross Trap being banned, it's kind of like, there's not much anything else I would want to run. You could run Best of the First Fist. That is definitely an option with this deck. If you don't have a Tunic, because not everybody has shelled out the money for a Tunic, and I completely understand that. Best of the First Fist is a viable option. I had one on my desk somewhere, and it has since disappeared. But Best of the First Fist is another option. You also could run Deep Blue, although Deep Blue is a little bit weirder because like you're never going to really want to sink a red in this deck, so like there's no reason to do it. And a lot of your cards cost 0 anyway, so you really don't need 3 resources. So I don't think you really need that card. For Arm Piece, it's always going to be Breaking Skills. Some people use Goliath Gauntlet, but in the main board, it's always going to be Breaking Skills. We do have like obviously like Ironhide Gauntlet on the side, and we'll talk about that in a second. But you want to be able to threaten your Rushing Rivers to get +1 so you can let them hit and pop Breeze Rider Boots. You want to basically have that constant +1 threat and be able to pop off with Breeze at any given time. Some people are going to ask, like, why are you not running Tiger Stripe Shuko, which I have. When I first saw this card, I was like, this is amazing for Benji. This card's bonkers. Like, it's perfect. This card was built for Benji. But it's really hard to play this card because it gives the second attack accuracy card with 2 or less base +1. So like you can run this by far, but like a simple play line, and we won't go too in depth into the deck yet because I don't want to like spoil things, but like let's just say for argument's sake, you play a double strike for 1, right? So double strike hits, you banish it. Now in order to not have this go over 2, because if you play it again immediately, it's going to get the +1 from Benji's ability, but it's also going to get +1 from Shuko's ability. So you don't want to play that because now they can block it with cards from hand. So you're going to have to play a Kodachi around it, right? Kodachi will give the +1 to Benji's ability. Then you can play Double Strike. It gets +1 from Shuko, and then you work on your merry way. Where this deck struggles with Shuko, right, is if you have a hand like this. And I just want to talk this over really fast because I think it's important, right? Don't mind what cards they are. Just pay attention to the actual cards, right? So you're in a weird spot with this where, like, let's do this. You run into all two power attacks, right? The hard part with this is, like, no matter what, Shuko is going to buff one of these to where it can get blocked from hand. Because if, let's say you play Soul Bead Strike for 2, it hits, then Benji's ability gives your next attack +1. Maybe you pitch your Break Tide to play your Kodachi for 2. Now you're stuck because now Salt the Wound is going to be +1 from Shuko's ability, so it's going to come in for 3. It's actually going to come in for 4 from Soul Bead Strike hitting. Spring Tidings, which you would want to play in this scenario, you can't because it's going to get +1 from Shuko's ability, so it's going to come in for 3, meaning they can block it from hand. Like, it just Shuko creates some awkward timing in certain hands where like it actually screws you from being able to do what you want to do. Now, I'm not saying you can't play Shuko, and I'm definitely going to be keep testing Shuko. But overall, it does make the deck a little bit harder. Like the play lines are a lot more like inconsistent sometimes, and it just makes it a little bit difficult. But definitely keep testing it. I just don't have it in right now. But maybe in the future when I figure out the best way to do it. And then at boots, we're running Breezejar boots all the time, no doubt about it. Nothing else. Like that's just, you know, that's just how it is. And then in the side, you know, we're going to be running, and let me make sure I don't miss. We have Tide Flip. Oh, there was my best of the first fist. I put my deck. That's funny. Yeah, that's a budget option for Tunic, in my opinion. You also can use the Dory Battle Box chest piece, like the one-time Tunic. That would work as well. So yeah, that's how we do it. These three are in the main board at all times, and then these two sub out depending on if it's an aggro or kind of mid-rangey matchup, or I guess longer than 2-turn matchup. Then in the sideboard, we have Ironhide Gauntlet for the mirror because we're going to respect the mirror because I think Benji's going to be pretty prevalent in Blitz, especially at like big events. And then we're running 3 AB, we're running 2 Null Rune, and then we add some tech from Uprising with Tide Flippers, which is basically amazing for Benji. It's Arcane Barrier 1, and then when you want to use its effect, which is destroy Tide Flippers, target attack action card with 2 or less base gains. Go again. You can use this on like a Rushing River or like anything else to kind of like really cement, you know, a wide turn. So that's what our equipment looks like. Pretty standard, nothing crazy, right? But very much the only difference was Tide Flippers, really. And then Shuko is obviously a contention point. Some people say it's amazing for Benji. Some people say it won't be. It just really depends on what you think is best, right? So we'll go ahead and do that. So there's Benji. So now we're going to get into our red. So the first thing that we add into this deck is Double Strike. Double Strike reads, when Double Strike Chain Link resolves, banish it. You would play it again this combat chain. If you do, it loses its ability. So when Shuko's not in play, the great thing about Double Strike is you play this Chain Link 1, or you play Kodachi for 1, right? Most of the time they're not going to block that versus Kodachi. Then you play Double Strike for 1. It hits. You banish it. Then you play it again for 2 because of Benji's ability, and it comes in for 2. You draw off Mask, right? Or they have to block it, right? So it's basically a 0 for 3 go again, unblockable from hand is the best way you'd look at this card. So it's really, really, really good. I highly suggest using it. And we'll put, I don't only have 1 Double Strike right now. I'm gonna get the second one here soon. But just to kind of represent the second Double Strike. So we're running 2 Double Strikes in that part of the deck. And then let's look at the rest of our reds. We're gonna go through reds here first, y'all. So y'all kind of understand where my head's at with the reds. Yeah, we have it right here. Sorry about that, y'all. So we have reds here, and the other red attacks that we're running. Gosh, I thought my deck was completely like tuned right. Okay. So then we have Command and Conquers, 2 Command and Conquer reds. With Command and Conquer and Flying Kicks, these are all the red attacks we're playing. So 2 Double Strikes, 2 Command and Conquers, 2 Flying Kicks. These are amazing, especially if you're running a Mask of Pouncing Links, because you really don't care about the chain breaking unless you're trying to go for Spring Tidings. So like this is amazing for that. And even a Mask of Momentum builds, like you Kodachi for 1, Double Strike, and then you play like Command Flying Kick for 7, right? With that 1 resource you have left in that blue. So it's really good. For cards that are not attacks at red, we're running Razor Reflex, which we'll keep over here to the side because we need to talk about how this plays into what Benji's trying to do. 2 red sigils, 2 ancestral empowerments, 2 sink belows, and 2 flick flags. Flick flag's really good because essentially you block with it for 4, and then you block with a Rushing River for 5. You block for 9 with 2 cards. Keep 2 cards in hand. Come back with a little bit of damage. Really good for it. So there's that. For yellows, we're running Rushing River, Rod the Tailwind. Those are the 4 like okay yellows that we're running. And then the rest of our yellows are kind of like swing yellows, which we'll talk about here in a second, which is Break Tide, Salt the Wound, and then Spring Tidings, right? So those are kind of, this is like our power stack, basically. We'll talk about that in a second. So, and then finally at blues, you're running 2 Fine Centers, just a 3-block blue, 0 cost is what I'm looking for here. 200 wins, which is really good for attacking. They're 2-block. Basically, all my 2-block blues I want to use for attack, and all my 3-block blues I want to use for pitch and block, if that makes sense. So 100 wins. Soul Bead Strike is like the only exception, because if you hit it with it, high gains go again, which with Benji is pretty much automatic. 2 blue rushing rivers, block 3 blue, but also can be used with Break Tide. 2 Winds of Eternity to go with those 400 winds that we have, and then 2 Ride the Tailwind. So that's a consensus of that part of the deck. So now we get into like the win conditions of the deck, right? I built this deck. Oh, and then we have 2 yellow 100 winds. Sorry, apologies for that. Now we kind of go into like, where does this deck really get its power? And it's really these 6 cards, kind of in this order like this. So you're wanting to get a Razor and Arsenal, honestly. Number 1 win condition of the deck that everybody kind of knows about is Spring Titans, right? When Spring Titans hits, draws a card for each other attack action card with 2 or less base you control on this combat chain. So since it says the word control, this sees itself. So if you attack with 3 cards, 2 or less base, then you attack with Spring Titans and it hits, you will draw 4 cards. Obvious to why this is good, especially if you pop Breeze Rider Boots. It's just nutty. You're going to be OTKing somebody with the right card. The reason you want to raise Reflex in deck is they're going to definitely throw a piece of equipment at it and block it for 2. And then if they can, they're probably going to try to block with something else maybe. So this allows it to go for 5, which is really nice. And if you Ancestral Empowerment, it goes for 6. The only way they can fully block out Spring Titans, if you only have 1 Razor, is if they use equipment for 2 and they play a D-React from Arsenal for 6, then they can block it out. But overall, really good. The second set of power cards you have are Break Tide. Basically, you play this after a Rushing River gets 5 Dominate Go Again. So if you play a Rushing River late in the chain and they let it hit, you pop Breeze Rider Boots to give it Go Again. And then you play Break Tide for 5 Dominate Go Again, banish a card on hit. Then you keep going and you can really have some nutty turns. I've had turns before where I legitimately played Spring Titans, drew into 4 cards, played a Rushing River, popped Breeze Rider Boots, played Break Tide, 5 Dominate Go Again on hit draw, and I just like OTK, like completely destroyed them, right? And the final win condition is Salt the Wound. Salt the Wound's like not as crazy as Break Tide or Spring Titans, but it is really nice at the end of a chain to like hit for 7 or 8 after you've already hit with like 8 to 10 unblockable damage. But yeah, so that's the basis of the deck. The only major changes from Uprising are Double Strike and then Tide Flippers in your equipment set. So, yeah, overall, really solid deck. I think it's going to be in a really good spot because with Viserai being gone and then Oldheim on his way out as well, like a lot of the reason Benji had trouble is because those 2 decks could block out so much of his cards, like so many of his cards, right? And it really made an issue for Benji to really get off his power cards because they would just hold their equipment for your power cards. Like Viserai alone could block Spring Titans like 3 times over, right? With Grasp and with his Skeleta and with, you know, even Spellbound Creepers and Skullcap. And then Oldheim obviously had all of his abilities to block it. So it really made the deck difficult. But with both those decks being out of the way, the only deck in the game that really is going to give him a little bit of trouble is Warrior. But Warrior, again, has a little bit of, like, she only can block out really 1 really good, like Courage of Blade Hold can block out 1 Spring Titans, and then Dynamo and like the second Courage could. But if you have a Razor in your arsenal, it's not going to matter. They're going to have to like throw everything at it. So it's not quite as oppressive as like Viserai or Oldheim was. But yeah, that's the basis of the deck. Again, I'm going to keep trying Shuko. Like I really want it to work. I really do. It's just really difficult. It makes his play lines very, very awkward. And you have to really sequence like amazingly every single turn. And you have to kind of get lucky with getting a couple 1-power attacks to really make it work. But yeah, hopefully y'all enjoyed this. Hopefully it made sense. Let me know what you think of the new deck. Let me know what you think of Benji's at. And we will see y'all next time on TC Talk. Thank y'all so much.